Hey everybody, welcome back to our channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. In this video I'm going to give you a tour of Norris Geyser Basin at Yellowstone National Park. My name's Matt with We're in the Rockies, and on this channel me and my wife we try to give you the most informative videos out there. Basically we want to be your digital tour guides for places in the West. So in this video we're going to discuss a place that I just think is out of this world cool, which is Norris Geyser Basin. So first of all, what is Norris Geyser Basin? Well, it's one of 11 geyser basins in Yellowstone National Park. A geyser basin is just an area that's like a hot spot that has a bunch of geysers in it. Geyser is kind of a catch-all term. There's really different formations. There's hot springs, there's geysers that explode out of the ground, there's fumaroles, which are like steam vents, there's mud pots. These are all different types of geothermal formations in Yellowstone National Park, but geyser is kind of a catch-all for that. Of all the geyser basins, Norris is the hottest, and it's also the one that changes the most. It really is undergoing constant change. Geysers that used to erupt don't erupt anymore. One in particular, Steamboat geyser, which is the largest geyser in the world, used to almost never erupt, and now it erupts every 5 days. So this part of the park is changing constantly. Norris is located right in the center of the park, is very easy to get to, has its own parking lot, you just pull right up. It's named after a fellow named Philetus Norris, who was the second superintendent of Yellowstone National Park. The first superintendent was not paid for the job and barely even visited the park, didn't do anything at all. At the time, the park had a lot of problems with people poaching, coming in and shooting animals, and they weren't supposed to. So they brought in this tough-looking dude, Norris, who used to be a fur trapper and had actually established 2 cities back east. Well, Norris came in and promptly started naming just about everything in the park after himself. Currently, he has a mountain peak in Lamar Valley named after him, and this geyser basin named after him. He tried naming a few other things after himself, but that got shut down at some point. The parking lot isn't terribly big, and it does fill up fairly early in the day, so you want to get there early if you're going to visit. We were greeted with this sign that says that if Steamboat Geyser erupts, it might spray your car and damage your glass and paint. Steamboat Geyser, as I mentioned, is the largest geyser in the world. It sprays up to 300 or 400 feet high. You walk up a short little walkway past a bookstore, and you get to this little visitor center here where you're greeted with a choice. You can go one of 2 ways. You can go to the Porcelain Basin or the Back Basin. Here's a little map showing each hike, the Porcelain Basin on the north and the Back Basin on the south. Let's take just a little bit of time here to kind of talk about this map real quick. You can see the Porcelain Basin is the shorter of the 2 hikes. It's about a mile long. These are, I say they're hikes, these are boardwalks. You're walking on the boardwalk. The Back Basin is about a mile, about 1.75 miles. But you can see that on both of them they have a little cutoff. I would, though, recommend that you don't take the cutoffs. These are really easy walks, and they're really stunning scenery that's just unlike anything you'll see anywhere else in the world. Even some of the other geyser basins, again, because they're not as hot as this basin, they have more trees and more growth. You'll notice in the upper right-hand side there's a little trail that says Porcelain Springs, then you see a little trail going off to the north. The parking lot I mentioned does fill up during the day. If you're up for it, if it's too full, you can actually park out on the main road and walk in on that little trail coming from the north end into Porcelain Basin. So for our tour today, we're going to go to the Back Basin first. And as you walk down the boardwalk here, one of the first things that you see is Steamboat Geyser. This has become a rock star in Yellowstone.
Come on, Steamboat! Come on, Steamboat!
Steamboat used to erupt maybe once a year. It went a long period without erupting at all. And then suddenly in 2018, it erupted over 30 times that year. 2019, over 40 times. 2020, the pace kept up, over 40 times. And currently it's erupting about every 5 days, and you will get people that will just camp out here and wait for Steamboat to put on a show.
Come on,
The length of the eruptions are unpredictable, sometimes about a half hour, sometimes over an hour. You can check a website called geysertimes.org to find out when it last went off and how long. We'll revisit Steamboat here in just a minute, but for now, let's move on to this little geyser called Norris Geyser. And yes, it looks like just a hot spring right now, but this geyser used to be a lot like Steamboat, where it would put on a regular show and people would gather around. Notice all the boardwalks and the viewing areas on the right hand side, and that's because people used to gather around, so they built the boardwalks for it. But then in the late 90s, it just pretty much shut down. It doesn't erupt anymore, so it's kind of weird to see all these boardwalks and viewing areas right around this geyser. But again, just shows how often this place is changing. As we stroll further down the boardwalk, just kind of marvel at what a strange looking land this is. How to travel to Yellowstone with 12 children. Along this back basin trail is a geyser called Pork Chop Geyser. In 1989, Pork Chop Geyser blew sky high and shot rocks over 200 feet away from the geyser. Fortunately, nobody was hurt, but it caused the Park Service to have to reroute one of these boardwalks around the geyser so that in case it did blow up again, nobody would get hurt. Here's some footage taken another time, not on my most recent trip, but this is Vixen Geyser that's putting on a little show for us. And this is the thing about Yellowstone, you never know when water will just start spurting out of the ground. So it's kind of fun because every time you go there, you see something different. This is called Minute Geyser, and this used to erupt every minute, and it would erupt about 50 feet high. Unfortunately, this also changed, but not because of nature. It changed because people kept throwing stuff down the geyser. Okay, so that was the back basin. Now let's look at Porcelain Basin. You can see why it's called Porcelain Basin. It's just white, looks like porcelain. But there is color throughout. You got some pretty blue pools, some green and orange colors going through there. You can see a steam vent every now and then. The colors are actually living organisms. They're like millions of little organisms, little bacteria that can only live in extremely hot conditions. So that's why you find them on the rings around some of these geysers and these hot springs. They can't, once it gets too hot, they can't live. So in the middle of some of those blue hot springs, they don't live there. They only live on the edges. I've never seen a geyser erupt in the Porcelain Basin, but my understanding is about once a year there's something that they call a disturbance, and the geothermal features get a little crazy in the Porcelain Basin. Kind of like my hair in this photo. On a gruesome note, there have been about 22 deaths from people falling into geysers in Yellowstone National Park, dating all the way back to the early days of the park. Unfortunately, the most gruesome occurred here in Porcelain Basin in 2016 when somebody fell in and their body was not recovered. That is the only time somebody's body has not been recovered from the geysers. Okay, let's check back in with Steamboat Geyser while I give you some information about Norris Geyser Basin if you're going to visit. How much time to allot for Norris Geyser Basin depends on which hike you do, the Porcelain Basin or the back basin, or both. You could certainly do both. I would actually encourage you to do both. I would encourage you to spend half a day here, like a morning here, and do both of those. I talked to somebody who kind of got sucked into waiting for Steamboat to erupt, and then Steamboat didn't erupt, and they spent a good 7 or 8 hours waiting for that thing to go off. So how much time you spend certainly would depend on how much you're planning on doing there. There is a campground nearby, the Norris Campground, That'd be a great place to stay on your visit to Yellowstone because it's right in the middle of the park. And then near the campground there is something called the Museum of the Park Ranger, which is kind of fitting because when Mr. Norris took over as the second superintendent of the park, he finally had a budget. As I mentioned, he was the first one to get paid to do that job. He earned $10,000 a year to do that job, but he hired somebody to help him try to manage this poaching problem that was going on. And that fellow is known as the first park ranger ever, the first park ranger. So it's kind of fitting that they have the Museum of the National Park Ranger here near Norris. If you're visiting Yellowstone soon, please check out our website, we'reintherockies.com. I've just prepared an itinerary that'll help you fit all the major sites in on your trip, and I'm also making an audio guide that you'll be able to listen to as you drive around the park. Okay, I really hope you enjoyed that tour of Norris Geyser Basin. If you like this video, please click the like button. And let me know in the comments, would you wait around for 7 or 8 hours to see the largest, the tallest geyser in the world erupt? I want to thank Geyser Gazer Craig Corliss for the footage of Steamboat Geyser erupting. Craig, thank you so much. If you're interested in seeing more of Steamboat, please check out his channel. I'll put a link in the description. Thank you for watching. Take care.